David Dayen of the American Prospect is here, ladies and gentlemen. What are your thoughts about Zohran Mamdani? Because that's like currently the number one thing that everyone is talking about, and obviously for progressive media figures such as yourself, I mean, this was a tremendous success, right? I feel like it definitely performed above my expectations for sure.
Well, he ran a great race. I happened to be in New York just before the election, and watching the media there. Every single ad promoted that New York Times editorial that was essentially an anti-endorsement of Mamdani. Yeah. And, the fact not only that he beat big money, that he beat the establishment entrenchment of an Andrew Cuomo, but that he beat the liberal Bible of the New York Times, and that was not a factor in the race, shows what polls have already shown, which is that Democrats are fed up with their leaders, that they want to see a new style of leadership. They want to see a leadership that promises something real. And they're willing to buck the establishment in order to get it. And that's, I think, what we saw. And now I think the task for Mamdani, presuming he wins the general election, which I think he will, is that he has to go out and deliver. Because the way that he's gained trust with the electorate is that he's promised to do some very specific things. And now he has to pull those off. And I think he's going to get a lot of help from Brad Lander, who, as I understand it, is going to become the first deputy mayor and help him with implementing these policies. And if they kind of figure out a way to not only campaign in a way that attracts massive support, particularly from the young, but also to actually deliver on his promises, then I think that's a great model for progressive governing.
Absolutely. And I think that's precisely what the mainstream outlets have been afraid of. And that is the reason. It's not necessarily the failure of a Zohran leadership, the failures of socialism. It's actually the successes of and I wouldn't even call, Zohran is a socialist, but I wouldn't call his platform a socialist one. I think it's very modest social democratic reforms that he's pushing.
I mean, you know what's funny? If you go to Erie, Kansas, a little town in Kansas, population about 800 or 900, you'd find a public grocery store. If you go to Akron, Ohio, you'd find free bus service. If you go to North Dakota, you'd find a public bank and a ban on non-compete agreements, which was also part of his platform. You could go all over Red America and find Zohran Mamdani's agenda in place.
No, absolutely. And they're treating it as though he wants to kill all the billionaires. And push him into the water and seize all of their assets by force. There's also the idea that there is going to be capital flight from New York, which has never happened and it will not happen. This notion that there is tremendous capital flight whenever there's a little bit of social democratic reforms or somewhat of an increase in taxes is also a silly one, especially considering how broadly popular this policy has been. The millionaire's tax has been in Massachusetts, right? This is a tremendously...
In California.
Yeah.
I mean, we have a millionaire's tax here, too, that was put in place by the voters in 2010. I mean, I think that certainly there are going to be efforts to try to make him fail. Many of those may be coming from the police department rather than the billionaires, but I think the media is going to take a shot at this. We ran a piece on Friday from someone who worked in the office of Bill de Blasio. Now, de Blasio gets a bit of a bad rap, but he did put universal pre-K in place in New York City, and he did some other pretty popular things. But he got completely blindsided by the police department, and he really got hit hard by the media. And those, the piece that we ran was talking about those pitfalls and the things that Mamdani has to look out for.
Absolutely. That is going to be a major issue. I mean, I remember when the Sergeant Benevolence Association was tweeting about basically doing a death threat to Bill de Blasio at the time, and even ended up doxing his trans child, like literally.
There was a claim
up.
that he there was a claim that he turned his back on the police department in some funeral or something. I forget exactly what the setting was, but that was this. Basically, it was just an excuse for the Police Benevolence Association to just turn their back figuratively on de Blasio, and that became, a real big controversy in his first term.
Do you think that getting the backing of like attorneys general could potentially help at least like create a line of defense for someone like Zohran in this process? This is something that I've been thinking quite a bit about, and I feel like there have been a wave of some successful progressive prosecutors that are progressive DAs, for example, like Larry Krasner is the obvious perfect example of this, and then some unsuccessful ones as a consequence of immense pressure before they could actually implement any of these like progressive policies. But that has kind of like kept the city in check. Larry Krasner being the great example of this, because like murder rates have gone down, and there was a lot of pressure to even pressure to undemocratically unseat him. As a matter of fact, he withstood these attacks, and now it is seen as it can be held up as a tremendous success. Do you feel like a similar thing could happen as well in New York City?
I mean, potentially. I don't know if it's necessarily just Tish James's support, but the support of Lander and the support of Jerry Nadler and some other, sort of communicators that can just sort of offer testimony for Mamdani. I think really the fact that he essentially created his own media in this campaign, that he went around that filter and was able, through more perfect union kind of videos and through relentless attempts to engage the public, really allowed people to get his views directly rather than having to get them filtered through the New York Post or the New York Times. So I think that's going to be a real help to him, and something he's going to have to continue to do during his time should he win the office, because it's just too important. What we've learned now in the Trump era is that communicating in government is just as important as delivering. I mean, you not only have to act on your promises, but you have to let people know and make sure they know that those promises were kept, and this is the benefit that you're getting. So he's set up well to do that in terms of his media architecture, and I hope that he continues.
Yeah, I hope so as well. The Morena method is what they're calling it. The same thing that AMLO did, the same thing that Claudia Sheinbaum is also continuing, is not only do you have good policies, but you also have basically created your own funnel, your own faucet of information that people can get directly from you without any sort of like dilution from the message. And it's something that we've seen quite a bit, even in the past couple of days. Like after this unprecedented victory, it does seem like a lot of even mainstream liberal adjacent outlets are seemingly more predisposed with attacking Zohran, talking about anti-Semitism, sometimes viciously smearing him, as Kirsten Gillibrand did, saying he wants to implement a global jihad on Jews. Or Eric Swalwell saying he doesn't agree with Zohran Mamdani's statements on Jews, which Zohran Mamdani has never said single anti-Semitic thing at all. And just like this implication that he is somehow anti-Semitic, which I think is just racist, if I'm being honest. Maybe I'm a little biased, 33-year-old socialist Muslim political commentator myself, but it is there is
hard not to come
to
that conclusion, though. As a older than 33-year-old Jew, it's hard to not come to that conclusion. It's definitely been really disgusting. And the other thing that's amazing about it is, and maybe this is a segue to what we're going to talk about, but we have this bill on the floor that is going to, cut taxes for billionaires and take food and medical assistance away from the most vulnerable people on earth. And we have to pivot and talk only about the material concerns of Americans, the Hakeem Jeffries of the world and people like that, instead of pivoting in that conversation and saying, look, I think I want to talk about the Republicans and the fact that they're taking away all these benefits from people. They have spent this critical moment, because the bill is going to pass. If it passes in the next few days, they've spent this critical time smearing Zohran Mamdani for alleged acts of anti-Semitism. It's really incredible.
Yeah, especially at a time when, like, clearly positioning yourself against Israel immediately invites like anti-Semitism smears. And I think it's happening. It's always happened that way, obviously. But now the public is broadly aware of that as well. But the public also, especially within the Democratic Party's base, is insanely anti-Israel. You have, the 80% numbers now, like numbers previously unimaginable as far as like animosity towards what Israel is doing. And it's obviously well-deserved animosity towards Israel.
I mean, the funny thing is that Andrew Cuomo essentially made this a centerpiece of his campaign. He is the one that brought these things up in debates, in ads, and it failed among the electorate. So we don't have to guess how these attacks will go. They have fallen flat among the Democratic electorate in New York City. And that is a really important thing to internalize if you are a Democratic candidate who thinks they can get credit or get money for smearing people in this fashion.
Yeah, that's something that I noticed as well, was that I thought I didn't like speak on this too much at the time, but like I thought that their constant attacks on anti-Semitism, on like suspected anti-Semitism due to his like popular position on Israel, actually took up so much time and space away from other lines of attack that may have been more successful.
Right.
The usual bread and butter, like, oh, this guy wants to break the city, this guy wants to ruin the finances of New York. Or, I mean, who knows if that would have been successful as well, because it seems like Zohran had a tremendous door knocking operation, 50,000 campaign volunteers. Like this is, this is.
And we were on the ground. We had people at the Prospect who walked around with canvassers who were out at the polling locations that week, and you could feel the energy. And I agree that they had many choices for lines of attack. One of them being that Kathy Hochul, the governor, probably isn't going to raise taxes to give New York City the kind of funding that they would need to implement some of the policies. Not all of them need that funding, but that would have been a decent line of attack. I mean, it's actually has the benefit of being kind of true. And I think Mamdani is going to have trouble. He's going to have to mobilize his base to make sure he gets that funding. And that's going to be a big fight for him. But the point is that instead of doing that, instead of saying that, they went down this road that the donor base really wanted, and it failed. And, now they're trying, the funny thing was the day after the election, there was this big meeting of the business elite in New York City. They said to discuss the Zohran situation. Did you see that? That was the name of it. So they've gone back from, let's get behind Eric Adams, to, Cuomo still has a ballot line, maybe we can get behind him, to maybe we'll find somebody else. I don't know who that would be, maybe Bill Ackman or somebody. They are just flailing right now in New York City because they know that this agenda is very popular. And the way that Mamdani took the way he waged the campaign, laser focused on affordability, on making New York a better place to live, is extremely popular.